Let's talk about the ghost in the room, the one that has been sitting at the dinner table of your life since you were old enough to remember. The ghost of your father's silence. It's a presence so profound, so deeply woven into the fabric of your being, that you've probably stopped even noticing it consciously, yet it dictates the weather of your inner world. That silence wasn't just an absence of noise, it was a physical thing, a weight, a texture. It was the quiet that descended after you showed him a report card with anything less than an A. A quiet that felt heavier and more punishing than any shout ever could. It was the silence in the car during long drives, where the only sounds were the hum of the engine and the frantic, desperate noise of your own thoughts trying to fill the void, trying to figure out what you had done wrong this time. It was the silence that greeted your scraped knees and bruised elbows, a silence you misinterpreted as indifference, when all you wanted was a bandage and a hug and the whispered assurance that everything would be okay. We, as sons, spent our formative years drowning in that silence, gasping for an emotional air that never came. We constructed entire narratives based on that quiet. We decided we weren't smart enough, strong enough, good enough. We built identities around the lack of his approval, becoming overachievers in a desperate bid to finally hear the words, "I'm proud of you." Or we became rebels, acting out in a futile attempt to provoke any reaction, even a negative one, because anger felt better than this echoing, soul-crushing void. What we failed to understand in our youthful self-absorption was that his silence was never about us. It was never a reflection of our worth. His silence was a language, the only one he was ever taught, a mother tongue of stoicism passed down from his own father and from his father before him. Think about your grandfather for a moment. What do you really know of him? You know the facts, the stories. He fought in a war. He worked in a factory. He provided. But do you know the man? Do you know his fears, his insecurities, his shattered dreams? Your father does. Your father was a son once, a little boy living in a house governed by the same unspoken rules, learning that to be a man is to be a fortress, impenetrable and alone. Emotions were a structural weakness. Vulnerability was a crack in the foundation through which the harsh winds of the world would seep in. Love was a concrete action, a roof, a meal, a paycheck, not a fluffy, abstract feeling to be articulated. His father, your grandfather, demonstrated love through provision and protection, and in doing so, he accidentally created a legacy of emotional starvation. So when your father looked at you, his son, with all your bubbling, messy, human needs for affirmation and affection, he saw a foreign country. He didn't speak the language. He didn't understand the customs. Your tears confused him. Your requests for validation seemed like a critique of the solid, practical world he had built for you. And so, he did what any of us would do in a foreign land where we don't speak the language. He retreated into what was familiar. He fell back on the mother tongue of his own upbringing, quiet endurance. He spoke with his hands, with his labor, with his relentless daily showing up. He was trying to tell you he loved you in every nail he hammered, every bill he paid, every late night he worked. But you were listening for a poem and he was reciting a blueprint. This is the great tragedy of the father-son dynamic, a catastrophic failure in translation. We were waiting for a speech, and we were giving us a lifetime of action, and we never connected the two. We were on two different radio frequencies, broadcasting signals of love and respect into the static, each convinced the other wasn't listening. The first and most crucial step in healing this wound, and finally learning to speak this silent language, is to grant your father this monumental grace. You must see him not as the giant who failed you, but as the little boy who was failed himself. You must look past the stern fackhead and see the son who is still desperately seeking the approval of his own silent father. This isn't about letting him off the hook. It's about cutting the rope that ties you both to a past you didn't create. It's about understanding that his silence was a cage he was born into, and his greatest, most silent hope was probably that you would never have to enter it. But to free yourself, you must first stop rattling the bars and blaming the jailer. You must realize you were never a prisoner. You were just a visitor who mistook the architecture for intent. The legacy of silence is a heavy inheritance, but it's one you can now choose to refuse. And it starts with this single, liberating realization: his silence was never your fault. It was his burden handed down, and now you had the power to lay it down for good. So if his silence was his native language, a tongue of quiet endurance inherited from a long line of men who spoke with their hands and not their hearts, then what was he actually saying? If we stop straining our ears for the words we wish we'd heard and instead open our eyes to the life he was living right in front of us, an entire university of unspoken lessons reveals itself. This was the silent curriculum, a rigorous, relentless education in what it means to be a man, taught not from a textbook but from the raw, unvarnished example of his own existence. Remember those Saturday mornings, not the lazy, cartoon-filled ones you might have wanted, but the ones where he woke you up at dawn, the air still cold, and put a tool in your hand. He wasn't just fixing a leaky faucet or changing the oil in the car. He was conducting a masterclass in self-reliance. In a world that feels increasingly fragile and digital, he was teaching you the primal, unshakable confidence that comes from looking a problem in the eye with greasy hands and a determined heart, and wresting a solution from it. He was showing you that you are not a victim of your circumstances. You are an active participant, a problem solver, a creator. And when you fell off your bike, off the porch, in front of your friends, and the hot tears of pain and embarrassment welled up in your eyes, and he stood over you and said in that firm, steady voice, "Get up. Dust yourself off." It felt cold, didn't it? It felt like a rejection of your pain, a dismissal of your fragility. But you were misreading the lesson. He wasn't teaching you that your pain was invalid. He was teaching you that your resilience is greater. He was inoculating you against a world that will not stop to pity you. He was forging in you through that seemingly cold instruction, a core of steel. He was saying, "I know it hurts. I know you're scared. But I also know you are stronger than this fall, and your job is to prove it to yourself." Every single day, without fanfare or complaint, he went to a job he might have despised. He dealt with a boss he couldn't stand. He endured commutes that drained his spirit. He faced frustrations and setbacks he never brought through the front door. Why? For the paycheck, yes, but that's the shallowest layer. He was writing on your soul in invisible ink that only time would reveal, a sacred text on duty and sacrifice. He was defining love not as a fleeting emotion, but as a series of actions, a relentless showing up, a putting of your own desires and comforts on the altar for the sake of those you are responsible for. That firm, calloused handshake he taught you. It wasn't just a greeting, it was a lesson in projecting strength and claiming your space in the world. It was a non-verbal contract of respect between men. The way he treated your mother, whether with a quiet, steadfast loyalty, a fierce protectiveness, or even in his flawed way by simply staying, was your primary, most powerful tutorial on how to treat women, on what commitment looks like when the glitter fades. We spend our childhoods and adolescences waiting for the big cinematic talk about life, the "son, let me tell you how the world works" speech. And we completely missed the fact that the lecture was happening in real time, every single day, in high definition. It was in the set of his shoulders when he was tired but kept going. It was in the way he handled a crisis with a quiet focus that pushed the panic away. It was in the simple, unheralded act of waking up and doing what needed to be done, again and again and again. We were so deafened by the silence of his lips that we missed the roaring symphony of his actions. His love was not absent, it was architectural. He wasn't a poet, he was a master builder. While we were looking for a love song, he was building us a fortress of character, of principle, of grit. We were complaining about the lack of music while standing safely within walls he had built to withstand every storm life could throw at us. The curriculum was always there, meticulously taught day after day. We were just absent from class, staring out the window, listening for a bell that was never going to ring. It's time to go back to that classroom. It's time to walk the halls of that fortress he built and finally read the lessons etched into every beam, every brick, every stone. The textbook was his life, and your degree is the man you are today. Look at the strength in you, the resilience, the ability to endure. That's his handwriting on your soul. Now the question is, will you finally acknowledge the author? But this silent curriculum, for all its lessons in strength and resilience, had another, more shadowy dimension, a side that felt less like a protective fortress and more like a prison of expectation. This is where the silence turned from a language of love into a dialect of pressure, a weight that settled on your young shoulders and shaped the very architecture of your ambitions and your anxieties. This unspoken expectation is the heavy stone bridge between you and your father, a structure you both stand on, feeling its immense load, but neither of you knowing how to lighten it or cross it to truly meet in the middle. You felt it, didn't you? That constant, invisible bar you were supposed to clear. Never shouted, but always implied, to be better, stronger, faster, smarter, to be more. It was in the way he talked about other people's sons, their accomplishments highlighted as a subtle benchmark. It was in the slight tightening of his jaw when you chose an artistic path over a practical one, or when you preferred a book to a baseball bat. It was in the questions he didn't ask, the interests he didn't share, the version of you he seemed to be waiting for that never quite materialized. For our fathers, a man's identity was inextricably linked to his performance in the world. His worth was a tangible thing, measured in his output, his conquests, his ability to bend his environment to his will. He was a builder, a fixer, a provider in a concrete jungle. And so, when he looked at you, his son, he didn't just see a child to be loved, he saw a project to be perfected, an extension of his own legacy, a walking, talking report card on his effectiveness as a man and as a father. Your achievements were not merely your own in the silent, unexamined calculus of his heart, they were his achievements. Your triumphs validated his life's work. And conversely, your failures, your stumbles, your deviations from the path he had charted in his mind felt like his failures. They were a reflection of a flaw in his blueprint. So when he pushed you relentlessly in sports, it wasn't necessarily because he dreamed of you being a professional athlete, because he saw the football field or the basketball court as a training ground for the competitive, often brutal world he knew you would face. He was trying to make you tough because the world, in his experience, was tough. He was trying to make you a winner because he believed losing had dire consequences. When he questioned your career choices, it was often from a place of deep-seated fear. The fear that you wouldn't be secure, that you would struggle financially, that you wouldn't be able to build your own fortress for your own family one day. His own fears about survival, about relevance, about his place in the pecking order, were projected onto you as expectations. The silence around these expectations is what made them so potent and so corrosive. You can't fight a ghost. You can't argue with a sigh. You can't refute a disappointed glance. This unspoken pressure becomes the background radiation of your life, a constant low-grade anxiety that you are not measuring up, that you are a disappointment, that the love and approval you crave are conditional upon a performance you don't fully understand. You internalize this voice, and it becomes your own harshest critic, the relentless inner taskmaster that drives you to burnout or paralyzes you with the fear of failure. To heal from this, we must perform the delicate surgery of separation. We must learn to separate the man from his mission. We must understand that his expectations were rarely a cold, calculated judgment of you, but were more often the distorted echoes of his own insecurities and the harsh lessons life had taught him. That heavy stone bridge he built between you was not an act of malice. It was his tragically flawed attempt to connect with you, to pull you onto the solid ground he believed was safe. It was the only material he had, the stone of his own struggles, the mortar of his fears. He was trying to build a pathway for you to walk on, but he didn't realize its weight was crushing you. Our work is not to dynamite that bridge in anger, but to acknowledge its presence, understand its composition, and then, with compassion and conscious effort, begin the long process of transforming it. We must replace the stone with something more flexible, more forgiving, something that allows for a real connection. We must build a new bridge, one made of understanding, of spoken affirmations, of embraced vulnerabilities. But before we can build that new connection, we must first stop resenting the old one for being what it was, the best and only bridge he knew how to build. Yet, for all the weight of that unspoken expectation and the heavy silence that could fill a room, there existed another, profoundly different kind of quiet. This was not the silence of absence or judgment, but the silence of presence. This is the sacred ground of the relationship, the place where the roles of father and ensign momentarily dissolved, and you were simply two human beings sharing a space in the universe. This is where we must now train our focus, to sift through the louder memories of conflict and disappointment, to find these golden, quiet moments where the essence of your connection lived, untouched by the world's demands. Think back beyond the report cards and the missed goals. I want you to search for the stillness, the moments where nothing was being demanded, taught, or expected. Perhaps it was late on a Sunday afternoon, sitting together in the living room, each of you reading your own book, the only sound being the gentle turn of a page and the steady rhythm of each other's breathing. There was no need for conversation. The shared silence was the conversation. It was a communion. Or maybe it was during a long car ride at night, the darkness wrapping around the vehicle, the dashboard lights casting a soft glow on his focused face. The radio might have been playing low, or it might have been off completely. You looked out your window at the passing constellations of distant farmhouse lights, and he looked out his, and in that moving capsule through the night, you felt a strange, unshakable peace. You were going somewhere together, and that was enough. For some, it was fishing on a still lake at dawn, where the world was painted in hues of orange and blue, and the only sounds were the gentle lap of water against the boat and the occasional cry of a distant bird. He wouldn't be giving you instructions. He wouldn't be critiquing your cast. He would just be there, his line in the water, his presence a steady anchor in the vast, quiet morning. In these moments, the performance was over, the script was thrown away, the relentless curriculum on how to be a man was temporarily suspended. There was no test to pass, no standard to meet. He was not your instructor, and you were not his student. He was simply your dad, and you were simply his son, and his presence in that space with you was the entire message. It was a silent, powerful transmission that said, I am here with you, and your company is a comfort to me. This moment right here with you is where I want to be. We often overlook these moments because they lack the drama we associate with significant memories. They don't have the fireworks of a grand achievement or the thunder of a heated argument. They are soft, subtle, and easily forgotten in the noise of life. But they are, in fact, the most foundational memories you have. They are the proof of concept for your entire relationship. They are the evidence that beneath the layers of societal roles, generational baggage, and unspoken expectations, there was a genuine, fundamental bond, a connection that transcended words. In these moments of quiet presence, he was sharing his soul with you. He was letting you see the man behind the mask, not the provider, not the disciplinarian, but the human being who found solace in a quiet room, peace on an open road, and a simple, unadorned joy in sharing his space with his child. He was offering you a glimpse of his inner world, a world without the armor, and he was inviting you to just be with him in it. That is a gift of immeasurable value. It is a gift we are often too young to appreciate, too busy yearning for louder validations to understand the profound validation of a shared, comfortable silence. His presence was his anchor in a chaotic life, and in those moments he was offering you that anchor. He was sharing his peace. He was saying, in the only way he truly knew how, that your mere existence, your simple, unperformed self, was worthy of his time, his attention, and his quiet, undivided company. So I urge you, go back, dig deep, past the noise and into the stillness of your memory. Find these moments. The time you helped him rake leaves and ended up jumping in the pile. The time you sat together watching a storm roll in from the porch. The time he taught you how to tie a tie, his hands steady and sure, his focus entirely on the task and on you. These are not small memories. They are the diamonds buried in the rough ore of your past. They are the true, unadulterated language of his heart spoken in a whisper, so soft you had to be still to hear it. If you can find them, hold them, polish them. Let them become the memories that define him for you, not the loud silences of disappointment, but the quiet, powerful silences of love, spoken through the simple, sacred act of being there. And now we arrive at the most confronting, the most unsettling, and ultimately, the most liberating truth you will ever face on this journey. The silent language of your father does not end with him. It was not a monologue delivered from his generation to yours. It was a conversation, and you have been answering him your entire life, often in the same tongue you learned from him. The ghost does not stay in the past, it has taken up residence in your present, and you see its reflection every single time you look in the mirror. This is the moment of reckoning, where intellectual understanding must become personal responsibility. You will hear it first in your voice, at the most unexpected moments. A phrase will tumble out of your mouth, a turn of speech, a particular cadence, and for a split second it will not be your voice you hear, but his. You will see it in your gestures, the way you hold a tool, the way you cross your arms when you're skeptical, the particular shrug of your shoulders when you're resigned to a situation. You will feel his impatience rise up in you like a sudden fever when things aren't moving fast enough. You will feel his stubbornness harden your own resolve, making you dig your heels in long after the point of reason. You will feel his solitary way of dealing with stress, the retreat into a silent internal fortress, pushing away the very people who want to help you become your own default setting. And then, most painfully of all, you will witness your father's silence manifest in your own relationships. With your partner, when you withdraw instead of communicating, building a wall of quiet where a bridge of words should be. With your friends, when you mistake vulnerability for weakness and offer a joke instead of a listening ear. And most terrifyingly, with your own children. You will feel the urge, the almost biological compulsion, to repeat the patterns. You will see your child's tear-streaked face and feel the old, inherited script telling you to tell them to be tough, to stop crying, to get up and dust themselves off, when what their soul is crying out for is the comfort and safety of your arms. You will feel the weight of your own unspoken expectations for them begin to form, a new stone bridge under construction with you now as the architect. You will find yourself, to your own horror, building the same prison you spent a lifetime trying to escape. This moment of recognition, of seeing the ghost in the mirror, can feel like a life sentence. It can feel like all the work, all the understanding, all the forgiveness was for nothing because the cycle is fated to continue, with you now playing the role you once resented. This is the crossroads. This is the point where you decide if the legacy ends with you, or if it continues through you onto another generation. But I am here to tell you with absolute certainty that this terrifying recognition is not your prison, it is your key to freedom. This is the moment you have been training for, because when you can see the inheritance clearly, when you can name the ghost, you finally, for the first time, have a choice. You are not your father, but you carry him within you. The goal is not a futile war of self-annihilation, an attempt to eradicate every trace of him from your being. That is a battle you will lose, and in the process, you will lose the strength, the resilience, and the dignity he also passed down to you. The goal is integration. It is conscious, deliberate curation. It is looking at the man in the mirror and saying, I see you in there. I acknowledge your presence. And now I will choose which parts of you I keep and which parts I let go. Every single time you choose to soften, when every cell in your body tells you to harden, you are breaking the cycle. Every time your child falls and you choose to kneel, to open your arms and ask, before you ever think about saying, get up, you are writing a new chapter in a very old book. Every time you feel the urge to retreat into silence during a conflict with your partner, but instead you take a breath and say, I need a moment, but I am not leaving this conversation. You are translating the silent language of the past into a spoken language of connection for the future. Every time you look your child in the eye and say, I am so proud of you, for no reason other than the fact that they exist, you are dismantling the stone bridge of expectation and building a garden in its place. Forgiving your father and understanding his silence was only half the battle, the easier half. The other half, the real work, is forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for the times you have already repeated the pattern. Forgiving yourself for the moments you were not the father, the partner, the man you wanted to be because you were operating on an old inherited operating system. And then with that forgiveness granting you grace, you make a different choice. Not once, but over and over and over again, until the new path is worn deep and the old one begins to grow over with the grass of your conscious effort. You are the point of transformation. You are the link in the chain that can be remade, not of iron and obligation, but of gold and choice. So here we stand, at the end of our understanding and the absolute beginning of our healing. We have listened to the silence and heard its complex history. We have translated its lessons of strength and felt the heavy weight of its expectations. We have cherished the sacred moments of presence and confronted the ghost of our father living within ourselves. Now, the only question that remains is the most important one. What will you build with this knowledge? The analysis is over. The time for action is now. This final chapter is not about your father. It is about your future. It is about taking the raw materials of your past, the pain, the love, the confusion, the strength, and using them to construct a new reality, to write a new script for your life and for the lives of those who will come after you. This new script does not always require a dramatic, cinematic confrontation with your father. For some of you, that door may be closed. Your father may have passed on, taking the chance for a spoken reconciliation with him. Or he may be too old, too set in his ways, or simply too fragile to have the heavy, emotional conversation you have been rehearsing in your head for decades. And that is okay, it has to be. Because the most profound and powerful conversation you will ever have about this is not with your father. It is the conversation you have with yourself about your father. Writing the new script begins internally in the quiet of your own heart and the vast landscape of your own mind. It begins with you closing your eyes and, with the courage of a warrior, speaking to the image of your father that lives within you. Tell him everything. Speak the words you have been carrying like stones in your pockets for a lifetime. Tell him you were angry. Tell him you were hurt. Tell him how much you longed for his approval, for his hugs, for his spoken love. Forgive him out loud for what he couldn't give you. Thank him with genuine gratitude for what he did give you, the work ethic, the resilience, the quiet moments of peace. This internal reconciliation is not a pretend exercise. It is the most real work you will ever do. It is the process of surgically separating your identity from his legacy, of releasing yourself from the prison of waiting for an apology that may never come. It allows you to carry the good, the strong, the dignified parts of him without being continuously poisoned by the bad. It allows you to integrate him into your story as a complex, flawed, human chapter, rather than the defining tragedy of your life. If you are among the lucky ones and your father is still present in your life and there is a glimmer of possibility, then your new script might involve a different kind of conversation. Not a confrontation, but a curiosity. Not an accusation, but an investigation. It might look like you sitting with him on a quiet afternoon, not as a needy son, but as an archaeologist of a shared history. It might sound like you saying, "Dad, tell me about your father. What was he like?" Or, "What was the hardest thing you ever had to do?" Or, "Did you ever have a dream that you had to let go of?" You are not going to him for validation anymore. You are going to him to understand the man. And in seeking to understand him, you are performing the ultimate act of love a son can offer a father. You are seeing him, perhaps for the first time. And in that act of seeing, you are inviting him, gently and without pressure, to step out from behind the role of father and to meet you person to person. This is how you change the dynamic. This is how you begin to speak a new language of empathy and connection. And you just might inspire him to learn a few words of it himself. And finally, the most important part of your new script is the one you will write with the next generation, with your sons, your daughters, your nephews, your nieces, the young people in your sphere of influence. This is your legacy project. This is where you become the man who ends the chain of silence, not with a dramatic declaration, but with a consistent daily practice of a new way of being. Be the man who says, "I love you," freely and often. Be the man who is not afraid of tears, his own or his children's. Be the man who listens more than he lectures, who hugs more than he handshakes, who celebrates effort as much as achievement. Be the man whose strength is not defined by his stoicism, but by his capacity for kindness, his emotional courage, and his willingness to be vulnerable. Your father did the best he could with the tools he was given, tools that were limited, rusty, and passed down from a different time. Your job is not to blame him for his limited toolbox. Your job is to honor his struggle, his effort, and the love he tried to express in the only way he knew how, by building a better, more complete, more compassionate toolbox for yourself. The chain of silence that has bound the men in your family for generations can end with you. Right here, right now, with your very next breath, you can decide that it ends. You can be the last link of the old heavy chain, and you can be the first gleaming link of a new one. A chain not of silence and obligation, but a connection, a voice of felt and expressed love. The story is not over. The final page has not been written. You have the pen in your hand. What will you write next? Will you write a story of repetition? Or will you write a story of redemption? The choice from this moment forward is entirely, powerfully, and beautifully yours.